Grogu was taken by Moff Gideon and Mando has no idea where to look for him. However, he does have a group of friends to rely on, like Cara Dune, and found new allies in Boba Fett and Fennec Shand, who pledged their support. And then there is former adversary Mayfeld. How will he fit into this next chapter? Hi there, it's Micha. Join me and find out. I just watched chapter 15, The Believer, and it turned out quite different than expected. But it delivered nevertheless, maybe even more than I hoped. I am looking forward to sharing my thoughts with you. Additional insights, as always, will be provided by my friend and Star Wars superfan Neal, who knows the extended universe around Star Wars well and is always eager to share that knowledge. Neal also composed the music for these review videos. Thanks lad! Make sure to stay tuned till the end to find out the answer to last video's quiz question and to hear the new one. Ready? Okay, let's jump back in. This episode begins with Mix Mayfield working in a prison labor camp, being handed over to Cara Dune's custody. She leads the confused prisoner to the Slave One, Boba Fett's ship, where Mayfield meets Fett in his full armor, saying, "Oh, for a second there I thought you were this other guy." And on that cue, Mando walks out of the ship's entrance. Thinking Din wants to kill him for revenge, Mix learns soon that his help is needed, as he still got his Imperial clearance and knows the protocols to request the position of Moff Gideon's cruiser. Mayfield asks for his freedom in return, but is offered perks making his incarceration more bearable, to which he agrees after learning that Gideon got the little green guy. The nearest terminal where he can access the data is located on planet Morag, where the Empire is cultivating a hidden mining hub for Rhydonium, which they refine to create explosives. The plan is to hijack an armored transport truck, posing as the drivers and entering the facility. However, on entering the plant, they may be scanned for their genetic code, meaning everyone who is on the Empire's radar could trigger an alarm. Therefore, Fennec, Boba and Cara can't risk to join Mayfield on his task. So Mando does, as he realizes he could still cover his face with the mask of one of the troopers steering the vehicle. The women will secure the perimeter, making sure the two can escape in the end, while Boba sits tight in his ship, ready to pick them up. After acquiring a transport truck, which load could explode if they hit a speed bump too hard, Mix and Din have a meaningful talk about morals and what men are willing to do, which I will revisit in more detail later. For now, let's say they start to have a better understanding of each other. While they cross through a small village occupied by the Imperial forces, the locals throw our drivers, understandably, some murderous looks. Their talk is finally interrupted by an explosion and radio shatter from the other transporters on the lane, as pirates are attacking them with detonators to destroy the Rhydonium, most of which are fought off by Din in an exciting action sequence. Close to the compound and almost overrun with pirates, two TIE fighters are coming to the rescue, getting rid of the attackers. Inside the facility they are welcomed by cheer, as they are the only transport team that made it to the base today. Mayfeld discovered an access terminal in the cantina, but in there he notices his old commanding officer, Valen Hess, who might recognize him. Mando offers to go instead, but Mix tells him that the console will scan the requester's face to grant access. Din is still willing to go, accepting that he will have to show his face to the scanner and potentially to others. After the scanning is done, Valen Hess approaches Mando, asking him for his designation, his TK number, which he has no idea about. That moment, Mayfeld comes to his rescue, providing the data and saying that his partner is hard of hearing, since a particularly loud assignment, sheepishly adding that they all just call him Brown Eyes, as he now has seen Mando's face. The officer invites them to a drink, celebrating their heroic driving today. During their drink, the topic of Operation Cinder comes up, where Mayfield served and where Hess had sent troopers into an unwinnable battle, ultimately destroying a whole city filled with troopers, freedom fighters and civilians, killing almost 10,000 souls. which the officer celebrates as a big victory for the Empire, adding that the Rhydonium they secured today will sponsor battles that will pale that mission in comparison. Something that Mix wouldn't stand for, killing Valen at the spot while the Fiend raises his glass. The following moments are hilarious, as everyone around them looks at each other, not knowing what just happened and how to react, until a big blast fight ensues. Mix hands Din his trooper helmet, saying that he never saw his face, and they start fighting their way through the window up to the roof, where Kara and Fennec picking off everyone in their way with sharpshooter rifles. After Boba has picked them up, Mayfield grabs Din's cycler rifle and shoots at the transporters parked on the deck of the base, exploding the Rhydonium. The TIE fighters they sent after Boba are quickly destroyed with one of his many gadgets, in the blink of an eye. When they pick up Kara and Fennec, Din thanks Mix for his help, while he wishes him luck to get Grogu back. Ready to return to jail, Kara mentions that it is a pity that Mayfeld didn't survive this mission and died in the explosion, letting him stay on Morag, which the scoundrel happily embraces. This episode ends with a transmission received by Moff Gideon, in which Mando almost verbatim repeats Gideon's speech from the end of last season. Remember? The "You have something I want, it means more to me than you will ever know" speech. Only here, Mando replaces every "it" with "he." He means more to me than you will ever know, which makes these words even more powerful. Okay, that was another good one that went into a different direction as I expected. Let's start there. My expectation was that Mayfeld will be needed to get on board of Gideon's cruiser and would help in the rescue, both in next week's episode, while this episode would be about bringing him out and assembling the rest of Mando's team. But the prison break was done before the opening credits, with Kara just leveraging her new pull as Marshal, and apparently no other teammate was needed. Prognosis. I still think Bo-Katan and her team will join the group in next week's rescue caper. And they better make next week's episode the big rescue, because, again, a cliffhanger with Grogu in Gideon's hands would be brutal. The other new and recurring characters like Cobb Vanth and the X-Wing pilot from chapter 10 and 12, The Passenger and the Siege, will likely not reappearing in this season, but will become relevant in season 3, the same way they did it with Fennec, Mayfeld and Pelimoto this season. I did expect that they dive into our recurring topic of the grey area again by making Mayfeld more relatable, which they did, and so much more. A really positive surprise, which will be the central topic of this week's review video. One quick call out before we dive in. I really enjoyed all the movie and genre references in this episode, starting with the transport of explosives, which is a nod to The Wages of Fear, a French classic from the 50s, originally titled Le Salaire de la Peur, in which the main characters are truck drivers transporting unstable dynamite. A movie which was remade with Roy Scheider in the lead in the late 70s under the title Sorcerer, which was one of the leaked titles for this second half of season 2, which didn't turn out to be correct, but likely was a placeholder name based on this reference. We then had a nice action sequence, which was again fantastically engaging, paying homage to George Miller's Mad Max 2, aka The Road Warrior. And all of it was embedded into a buddy movie, where two people less than fond of each other have to partner up, seeing their similarities and maybe even becoming friends along the way. That's a good point to segue back into our main topic this week, the grey area and bending the rules. And this was relayed in two central scenes and according dialogues in this chapter. The dialogue in the transporter and the one while sitting on a table with Officer Valen Hess. In the transporter, Mayfield starts the conversation saying that they are both quite alike, which Mando denies, but Nix presents an interesting case. The cause you believe in depends on what you are told and where you are born. There are always forces that reign and others that are being ruled by those. He makes this point while driving through the small village. As for the locals, it doesn't matter if it is the Empire or the Republic that has their stations there. Both would be seen as invading forces. Mayfield sees himself as a realist and survivor who needs to bend the rules a bit if needed. Like Mando does by wearing a trooper helmet, saying something along the lines of, "Didn't you used to say you can't remove your helmet? Or is it that you can't show your face? Which one is it? Cause there's a difference. Or are you bending the rules here?" The main and most important lines of dialogues this week were these. Everybody's got their lines they don't cross, until things get messy. As far as I'm concerned, if you can make it through your day and still sleep at night, you're doing better than most. which says that most people aren't bad, but circumstances made some of them move into the grey area, redrawing their lines they previously wouldn't have crossed. A topic that reappears when they sit with the officer in the cantina, when Mix saw how the Empire killed off people on both sides without mercy. Till that point, he could tell himself that the Empire would just create order in a chaotic world. Even if this is by occupation. Something that Valen phrases as, people think they want freedom, but they really just want order. Likely the doctrine all troopers and Imperial fighters, as Mayfield always highlights that he was no simple trooper, were fed over and over until they believed it. Mayfield was that believer, someone who could live with bringing peace by force as long as it brings peace. But the massacre at Burning Con, seeing with his own eyes how thousands of lives were extinguished in an unpleasant decision that ultimately had a good outcome for the Empire, as Hess called it, likely marked the point where he turns his back on his beliefs and accepted the truth. That the Empire is just about power, not peace. Before he shoots Valen, he asks him how it was good for his fellow Imperial soldiers, for the freedom fighters and the civilians who just wanted to have a home. How destroying the city with them in it, how that was good for them. Mix brings this topic full circle as he later explodes the Rhydonium with the words, "We all need to sleep at night." Something that Kara from afar comments with a "huh," saying that the guy surprised her. Making a quick side note prediction here. My guess is that he turns around completely, becoming a good guy. He will likely join the locals and help them get rid of the Empire's occupation. He will likely pop up again next season, or in the newly announced series Rangers of the New Republic, which I assume will feature Cara Dune, with him maybe being offered a job in the New Republic, and maybe even becoming a love interest for her. We'll see. But back to the main topic. This episode opens up the issue of grey areas more than I ever expected, because in the first two trilogies, stormtroopers and Imperial minions were usually portrayed as soulless resources. Or at least people you don't think twice about before you kill them. They changed that a bit when Finn became one of the good guys, and when they highlighted that Han started out on the wrong side. Now they really start to explore the fact that not every trooper is necessarily evil. For me, being German, this episode was especially interesting, as it is no secret which regime inspired the Empire the most. And this is additionally highlighted in this episode by both Valen and Mix having German surnames, Hess and Mayfeld, not Mayfield, with Hess being the last name of one of the most notorious monsters of World War II, Rudolf Hess. They could have gone the easy and honestly understandable route of saying all involved soldiers were conscious part of the evil that happened, but they didn't, by drawing clear parallels to real history, where people were indoctrinated, believing to do the right thing even while betraying neighbors who didn't follow the rules, trying to ignore all rumors as propaganda until they saw with their own eyes what cruelties were really happening. And today, with fascism on the rise again all over the world, it is more topical than ever to understand that brainwashing the masses is nothing new, and that falling for it doesn't make each individual unredeemable. Some may need help to grasp the terrible crimes that were committed up the ladder, to actually believe the truth when they see it. How the truth is contorted now, however, is something new that may make things more difficult. Again, kudos to the producers for taking a more complex and differentiated approach to this topic, instead of taking the usual course of dismissing all nuances by reducing it to the ultimate evil at its core. And sticking with that topic of evil, I would be curious to learn more about the pirates they killed without a second thought, just by classifying them as pirates. I mean, don't pirates usually take things and not just try to destroy them? The pirates were clearly not locals, so likely no freedom fighters, but maybe they were still good guys trying to defeat the Empire? I peeked at the Easter eggs and didn't see that covered there, but Neal mentioned that there is a pirate faction that may be doing good deeds by now. So was that maybe them? But let's just accept the fact for now that they were just a different kind of evil in this episode. So it was interesting to see how all of a sudden, if they attack our heroes, the enemy with their TIE fighters were welcome and we see the celebrating troopers in a different light, at least for a while. Nicely done to also highlight the grey area topic there. I really loved this episode for these elements. Quick word to our other recurring topic, Din's father role. I guess at this point it isn't even a discussion anymore. He and everyone around him sees Mando as Grogu's dad. They even say his kid was taken at the start. And Mayfeld says, "I hope you get your kid back." And the grey area topic bleeds over into this topic as well. As in earlier episodes, he started to bend the rules for the child when he opened his visor a bit while eating together. In this episode, he didn't only remove his helmet, he chooses to show his face, as it was the only thing he could do to get Gideon's location. He placed Grogu over his creed, so yes, he undoubtedly sees the kid as family. And he also starts to find his own way. As we know, there may be more than just one way of the Mandalorian. And seeing him announcing himself to Moff Gideon at the end of the episode? Need I say more? Let's end this segment with 3 random observations. First, why did Din try to scan his face with a helmet on first? That just raised suspicion. But I guess showing his face, even with determination, was harder than he thought. So he tried it with helmet on first, in case it would work. Well, sometimes even the smartest minds are a bit foolish. Secondly, I like to know what Cara told and will tell her superiors. She must have given a good reason to get Mayfeld out. She obviously didn't inform anyone about the mission on Morag, otherwise she would likely have had New Republican support. But she has to debrief, as Mayfeld allegedly died on the mission. Does she have so much pull, or is the New Republic just very trusting? Will this have consequences? We will likely see in the near future. Third one, I liked how Mayfeld teased Mando by calling him Brown Eyes, rubbing in that he just saw his face. As Neal reminded me, it is also a nice callback to Chapter 6, The Prisoner, where Mayfeld demanded he would take off his helmet, so that there are no secrets, and especially asked to see his eyes. But, talking of Neal, what did he thought of today's episode? What he liked this week was Din fighting with the pirates without his Beskar armor, influencing his fighting style in another great action sequence. Also that he took off his helmet and finally showed his face to another human. He enjoyed getting to know Mix Mayfield and seeing a new side to his character, and loved the closing scene when Mando uses Moff Gideon's own speech on himself. Now for the rating. Neal didn't find anything negative, but still only scored the chapter with 8 out of 10 points. I struggled a bit with the rating myself, as it wasn't as satisfying as last week, but extremely interesting storytelling wise, and likely regarding the whole approach to ex-Imperial forces in the future. The main points this week may not be focused on the finale next week, but this doesn't make them less relevant. As they did everything almost perfectly in this one, I went with a solid 9 out of 10 points. Between the two of us it comes down as 8.5 out of 10 points, which is a fine score. After this is said and done, let's dig into our weekly helping of Easter eggs. And Neal found more than I expected. Respect. Seismic charge. In this episode we see Boba Fett deploy a seismic charge, sometimes also referred to as a sonic mine or sonic charge, from the Slave One, unleashing an explosive shockwave that destroys the TIE fighters pursuing him. The first time we saw seismic charges in Star Wars was in Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, where Jango Fett, Boba's father, released several of them while being pursued by Obi-Wan Kenobi in the Geonosis asteroid belt. Operation Cinder. In this episode we hear Mayfield refer to Operation Cinder while having a drink with Imperial Commanding Officer Valen Hess. This was a terror operation carried out by the Empire as a means of devastating several Imperial planets, taking place a few weeks after the Battle of Endor in Return of a Jedi. The operation was part of Emperor Palpatine's spiteful contingency plan, which should ensure that after his death neither the Empire nor its enemies would outlive him. As part of this, satellites were used to form extreme weather conditions that lasted about 3 months and ravaged the surfaces of these planets. There's also a key plot point in the Battlefield 2 computer game, where Eden Verso and Del Meeko, members of the Empire's elite Inferno Squad, defect to the rebellion after seeing firsthand what cruelty the Empire unleashes at the planet's civilians and their own comrades. Something they apparently have in common with Mix Mayfeld. Mix Mayfeld. Talking of Mix, he is an original character created for this TV show, like Din Djarin himself. So after watching this episode, you know as much as we know about his backstory. ISB recognition. In this episode we hear about the ISB recognition system in the Imperial base. The Imperial Security Bureau, ISB, was a law enforcement and intelligence agency formed by Galactic Emperor Palpatine and was dedicated to rooting out enemies of the New Republic and remaining stability throughout Imperial territories after its proclamation. One of its top operatives was Agent Callouts from Star Wars Rebels, who subsequently defected and became the rebel operative known as Fulcrum, who supplied the rebel Phoenix Cell with intelligence. Neal recommends watching Star Wars Rebels to see the story of Callouts defecting from the ISB. New Republic prison ship. We see a New Republic prison ship flying in the opening scene and appears to be bringing new prisoners to the prison planet. This is the same type of prison ship that Mando and the crew around Mayfeld broke into in Season 1, Chapter 6, The Prisoner. Jester Mariel. In this episode we see Boba's armor has been cleaned up and freshly sprayed since we last saw it in Chapter 14. If you look closely, you will notice that the armor has two symbols, the Mandalorian symbol on his left arm and the symbol of Jester Mariel on his right chest. Jester Mariel was a member of the True Mandalorians, who saved the life of a young Jango Fett when the Death Watch attacked the boy's home. Mariel raised the boy as a son until his death in the Battle of Cordar 6. Fett then succeeded his adoptive father as the new Mandalore. Neal recommends reading the Jango Fett comic book Open Season if you would like to know more. By the way, in Chapter 14, when Boba proved his claim to the armor, he shared his chain code, which someone on the internet cracked and translated, and it also contains his adoptive father's name. Here's the translation. Foundling took into the years the Concord Dawn, Mentor Jest, Father Fett, Boba Fett. Hasks. In the opening scene we see a Hask on the prison planet. Hasks are a species that were native to Haskin and are almost completely covered by fur, except for their faces. They had sensitive hearing and keen night vision for hunting. Hasks were near feral and were thought of by most as wild animals. Hasks made their first live-action appearance in Episode 7, The Force Awakens, in Maz Kanata's castle. Rhydonium. In this episode, the Empire is mining rhydonium, a combustible fuel, used during the Clone Wars and also featured in the animated series Star Wars Rebels. Stormtrooper helmets. Mayfield says that he can't see when wearing the Stormtrooper helmet. This is a nod to Episode 4, A New Hope, when Han and Luke are wearing Stormtrooper outfits. Luke takes his helmet off and states, "I can't see a thing in this helmet." Thermal detonators. The pirates, or more likely insurgents, were trying to blow up the rhydonium with thermal detonators. The first time a thermal detonator was seen was in Return of the Jedi, where Leia arms one and threatens to blow up Jabba's palace in an attempt to rescue Han Solo. Shore Troopers. On the Imperial mining facility we see Shore Troopers who made their first live-action appearance in the Battle of Scarif in Rogue One. Shore Troopers were a specialized variant of Stormtroopers, trained and equipped for combat in tropical environments. They operated as sergeants, which allowed them to command small squads of regular stormtroopers. So much for the Easter eggs. How did you like this episode? Was it interesting to you or did you experience it more as a filler? Let us know in the comments. And here the answer to the quiz question from last episode. This is not the first time Ming-Na Wen plays a character that is technologically enhanced. In which series was she, temporarily, portraying a robotic version of her main character? For several episodes she played an LMD, live model decoy, version of her main character, Agent Melinda May, in the Marvel show Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Now to this week's question. Waylon Hess, the Imperial officer, looked familiar, right? In which extremely successful Prime Cable show have you seen the actor playing a major antagonist, at least for the first few appearances? And do you know both the name of the actor and the character? Let us know in the comments. That's it. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please like it and feel free to share it with your friends. And why not subscribe to my channel so you won't miss any future video. Make sure to also hit the notification bell so you get a heads up whenever a new video is posted. So much for now, see you next time and thanks for watching!